That should do it.
Hello friends! I'm sure you saw the teaser for a new Professor Layton game in the recent Nintendo Direct. It inspired me to play an older Layton game, but which one? I wanted to play one I hadn't tried before, so I got to choose between the first and the last games. I decided to go with the last game in the series, Professor Layton and the Azran Legacy. Look, it even has a shiny box! On the Layton timeline, Azran Legacy is the third game of the prequel trilogy. I can't really remember anything that happened in episodes 1 and 2, but that doesn't really matter. Professor Layton has received a letter, so it's time for another adventure. The Layton games are notorious for poor pacing, but this entry doesn't mess around. There's a short introduction movie of Layton and his assistants Emmy and Luke boarding an airship, and then we're off to our first puzzle.
However, I'm afraid that I must first perform a simple check to confirm your identity. The identity check will take the form of a puzzle.
This game was originally released in 2013 in Europe and Japan, and the next year in North America, so it's officially retro this year. It was one of the worst-selling entries in the series, and I remember dropping the first 3DS game, Miracle Mask, well before finishing it. Since there had been a new Layton game almost every year back then, I was really feeling the Layton fatigue, so I skipped both Layton vs Ace Attorney and Azran Legacy. I imagine others being fatigued as well and skipping the final games. Another thing the games are notorious for is how Layton sees a random thing in the world, which reminds him of a completely unrelated puzzle. But what? This puzzle actually relates to the story. The first puzzle sees you flying the airship around Europe, perfectly managing the few levels to find your destination. I recall previous games having many non-interactive puzzles where you just enter your answer and hope it's correct during this agonizing animation.
Allow me to demonstrate. How vexing!
In this entry, most of the puzzles take the form of an interactive minigame, like the first one. The tactile minigames are much more forgiving than the riddles. You can play around to get the feel of the puzzle, and there's usually even an undo button. All the puzzles are exclusively played with the touchscreen, and most of the action happens on the lower screen. Some of them are fiendishly difficult, so you'll need to whip out the built-in notepad and maybe buy some hints. After figuring your destination, you'll get to the adventure part of the game. In his letter, Professor Sycamore said he had found a living mummy.
So, Professor Sycamore, you said you found a living mummy?
Professor Sycamore, that name sounds familiar. Where have I heard it before? Oh! Pokémon X and Y, released on the same year, had a professor with the same name. Now that's a curious coincidence. Anyway, the living mummy ends up being the last surviving member of the Azran civilization, allegedly millions of years old.
Possibly more.
Meeting a new character, of course, means a new puzzle. You release the girl from her icy prison, only for the main bad guy, Leon Bronev, to swoop in and capture her.
Thank you. We'll take it from here.
After an exciting air chase with real-time turret gameplay, you re-rescue Aurora to receive your main quest of the game from an Azran ruin. You are to collect 5 Azran eggs to uncover the titular Azran legacy. What is the legacy? Well, I guess Professor Layton already knows it, but will only reveal it at the most dramatic moment. Let's take a moment here to consider the premise.
You're an archaeologist, Professor. You have no doubt heard of the Azran civilization.
Of course.
Is this actually the first time when Professor Layton, professor of archaeology, is actually doing any archaeology. So far he has been investigating an inheritance dispute, tracking down a stolen murder box, riding a time machine to the future, checking out a ghost, meeting a mask-wearing magician, and working as both the defense and the prosecutor in a witch trial. Some of those stories involved some old items, yes, but this time he's going full Indiana Jones in search of artifacts scattered around the world by an ancient civilization. 3DS games didn't change the classic formula much, but the adventure gameplay was a bit different from the DS games. On the bottom screen, you have a map of the current area, allowing you to move around. On the top screen, you have the view to your current location. The scenes are built like dioramas and look really nice in 3D. Clicking the magnifying glass icon on the touchscreen allows you to investigate the Studio Ghibli-esque scenes in more details. There are the traditional hint coins to find from every chimney and other pointy thing, but this time there are more items for completionists to find. There's a completely meaningless collection of items you can view in 3D, and mystery items for a Street Pass minigame. You can use the mystery items for creating scavenger hunt challenges to share with other players over Street Pass. Sadly, my Street Pass has been pretty quiet in the 2020s. And don't worry, there are still tons of random puzzles to be found around the world, even in an enemy aircraft you're actively infiltrating. That makes Luke's question if it's appropriate time for a puzzle, but the real gentleman never leaves a puzzle unsolved. I had a pretty good time solving the puzzles in the game. I'm generally pretty bad with riddles and trick questions, so I was happy to find out most of the puzzles here are more about logical thinking, math, and playing different minigames. I encountered only 2 trick questions, one of which I was able to figure out myself, while I think the other literally required buying all of the hints to be solved without guessing randomly. Some of the math puzzles got pretty tricky, requiring you to first figure out a couple of formulas, then solving them. Some of them were easiest to be solved in Excel for me. Well, I'm an engineer after all.
Here is my answer. I enjoyed that!
I wonder if I'm just thinking too complicated and there would be an obvious simple way to solve them. Later in the game, there are optional, harder versions of certain puzzles. I have to admit skipping some of them since they were very difficult and I just wanted to get on with the story. The built-in hint system does a great job helping you over tricky puzzles, and I'm sure you can find solutions online if you're completely stumped. In total, there's 150 puzzles found in the world, which is quite a hefty amount. There's even some unlockable extra difficult puzzles in the bonus menu that you can access after meeting certain conditions, such as solving all of the trunk minigames. One big change to the Layton formula is how the world opens up a few chapters in. You have access to the airship Postonius, and you're free to search for the Azran eggs in any order you wish. Each egg is found from a certain area, where you have to solve a problem the locals are having to convince them to give you the egg that has been central to their traditions for 1,000,000 years. This format makes the story move at a nice pace. Previous games often had meaningless padding in their stories, but these small stories have pretty good flow. The stories are nothing mind-blowing, but they take about an hour each to complete and often have a small mystery to solve in the end. You can even travel back to previous areas to find new scenes and puzzles that pop up as you progress with the main quest. The game even keeps track of your items in your inventory, but it's still more visual novel than a point-and-click adventure game. I have to say, I've enjoyed the journeys of previous Layton stories more than their final conclusions. I was disappointed with their Scooby-Doo endings where everything was just faked somehow. I'm not going to spoil the ending of this one, but I wasn't disappointed this time. There are many reveals you can't see coming, but there's also actual stakes, and in the end it wasn't just hallucinatory gas or a research facility or whatever other disappointments the games revealed to be behind everything. You'll learn a lot about Layton's family and even get to meet both Layton's and Luke's parents. Well, they of course give you more puzzles. To summarize the story, you could say it's what you'd get by mixing Indiana Jones and Laputa Castle in the Sky and throwing in 150 puzzles on top. Ultimately, I had a nice time with the game. The globetrotting story kept me interested until the very end. The game looks really nice with Ghibli-esque backgrounds and Layton trademark weird characters, and most importantly, the puzzles were interesting. It doesn't break away from the classic Layton formula, but after 10 years without a true new entry in the series, it feels surprisingly fresh. It's also a perfect fit for the Nintendo 3DS that you can easily just open for a moment of solving some puzzles. If you're craving for some more Layton as I was, I think it's a great option. Sales numbers tell you probably hadn't played it. That's it for today. See you next time!